What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Diabetes Hustle Podcast. I am your host, Ali ABDUL-Kareem. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Today's episode, I interview Neil Greathouse. I met Neil on Instagram, and I was blown away from his YouTube content to his 1-minute clips on Instagram. This man is a character. I don't even know where to start, but the way he produces himself to make living with diabetes, more comedic. And he brings great information, and he's someone that I look up to when it comes to content creation. And today we get into really his story about previously, before he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, what his career was, what it's like being a dad with type 1 diabetes, his projects he did, which is hashtag HACKTHEBETES, and he's known on Instagram as the Beaties. And I'm definitely going to throw in a bunch of plugs because I'm a huge fan of Neil, and Neil is just a great guy overall. It was a great time talking to him. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly appreciate it. I know you guys are going to get a lot of value from this one. Let's get into it.
Bleh. Okay, Get it out. All right, guys, I am Ali ABDUL-Kareem here with the Diabetes Daily Hustle Podcast. I have a special guest with me today. I'm here with Neil Greathouse. Did I say it last time?
Yeah, that's probably it. It's better than Greenhouse. I got that in junior high, so Greathouse.
I actually put down on my contacts Greathouse, and then I saw your name again. I was like, it's not Greathouse.
I'll answer that. I'll be like, they said Greathouse. I'm like, that's me right here. Down in front of me, I got you.
All right, well, I just want to tell my audience I'm genuinely super excited for this episode. We met through Instagram, and I saw your content, and I was like, this guy is, like, phenomenal with the camera. Like, the way you edit and produce yourself to, like, make people laugh, and you give them information that's, like, it's real precise. It's not just comedic stuff. You're giving them value. So for the people at home who don't know, just give them a short, like, where do you live? What's your name? How long have you been living with type 1 diabetes?
Yeah. So I live in Central Arkansas, live in a little tiny town called Conway. It's right outside of Little Rock. We moved here about 10 years ago. We used to live up near Cleveland. I was born in Akron, Ohio, 3 rooms down from LeBron James.
I was just going to say, are you 3 rooms down?
3 rooms down from where he was born. Yeah, I was born in Akron General Hospital. Same floor, same wing.
You must be a huge LeBron fan.
I'm a baller. No, I'm not. I cannot play basketball. I have 0 rhythm, 0 basketball skills. I blame it on the diabetes mostly. I have let's see, I'm about 26 years with type 1. I got it when I was in the Air Force.
Wow.
So it's been a couple of years. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm totally normal, right? Like, nothing wrong with me at all.
I mean, you're so funny.
Yes. Yep.
For the people at home, I just want to know, like, where I'm trying to give them background context. Like, Neil just puts me in this place where when I talk to him, it's like I've known him for years when I've only known him for like a couple of weeks. He's just that genuine, hilarious, makes you feel at home kind of person. So let's get real dark right now.
I got a different shirt for that. Hang on, let me unbutton.
Not that kind of dark.
Oh, okay, all right, I got it.
Take us back, in all seriousness, take us back when you first got diagnosed. Take us back to that place. What was it like? Tell us everything, the symptoms, everything.
Wow. So I was in the Air Force. I was in the middle of a flight training program, and I had a super cool job that I worked my tail off to get. And in the middle of training, we were passing out every day, day in, day out. It was hypoxia training, so pressure sickness training. So we spent about a good month doing some of this training, and we would get in these pressure chambers, and they would simulate loss of cabin pressure. You kind of pass out. Well, what I didn't know is that my pancreas shut down in that process. We passed the class and kept going. But so from that point, I made it 3 more months. Through military training, but my pancreas was shot, like gone. So my blood sugar was 1600 when I went in the hospital. Whoa. I didn't know anything about type 1. Didn't know. I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. And I'd lost a bunch of weight. What actually stood out to me, and I knew something was wrong, is like my mouth was super dry. I could not drink enough. Like I was downing like orange juice or Dr. Pepper in between classes. I would go over to the soda machine and just, I was just hammering, just pouring, gasoline on the fire. And one weekend I kept throwing up constantly. And I saw a buddy of mine who I went through tech school with, and he passed me on base, and he looked at me. He's like, dude, you lost a lot of weight. I was like, what are you talking about? And you just don't notice it, over 3 months. I just didn't really notice it. I'm like, man, I was thinking like I'm really getting cut. I'm super lean. Like you could see all of my abs, just all of it. And so I'm looking at it on the positive side, and he finally convinced me like something's wrong. And I was puking my guts out for about 3 days. It was a 3-day weekend. And finally I just asked my buddies, I said, well, you got to call an ambulance or something, because we were going back from class. They had agreed to not say anything. I had agreed not to say anything because these are my roommates and we were in the same program together. And if you washed out, odds are you don't get back in. So no one, like everybody is looking around like, straight faced. Everybody's acting like everything was all together and smiling. And I said, you got to call an ambulance. So what they did is they brought me in and said, you're really dehydrated. Do you feel thirsty? And I said, yeah. And they just happened to check my blood sugar. And next thing you know, like I'm on one of those gurneys flying up to the hospital, and they were they were kind of alarmed. They said, hey, your blood sugar is 1600. Do you have type 1? I was like, I don't know what. They said, your pancreas isn't working. You have type 1 diabetes. And so I was in the hospital for a week. I went blind, completely blind, because my eyes were so messed up from being like that for 3 months. So I just kind of glazed over, and then I knew that the job I was doing was done. I knew it was over, and I didn't know if I would still have a career in the military. And so they came and offered me. And I mean, I had a fairly elite job. Just being able to fly and all that was just a dream come true. And they came back to me and said, look, you still can't have a career in the military. It's going to be one of two jobs. You can be a trash collector, or you can drive a bus for a living. And I said, check, please. Like, just get me out. I just couldn't do it. I'd studied and worked so hard. So then I came back and went to college, and I laugh about it because like when they sent me home, they had like a little piece of notebook paper with like, if your blood is between 100 and 130, take this much insulin. If it's between, I'm talking on a piece of notebook paper, and they gave me some insulin and they're like, you had to pre-mix my insulin, all that kind of stuff back then, and a bunch of syringes. And I practiced it on myself twice in the hospital, and they sent me home. And when like, if you have kids, like when they hand you your newborn at the hospital and they send you home, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and you're sending me home with this? And it was this thing. I'm like, you want me to stick that in myself? You trust me to do that? And so it was like, education overload. You're trying to figure it all out. But I'll be totally honest with you. For the first 7 years, I ate whatever I wanted. I just shot up as much insulin as I wanted, and I just didn't care because I refused to believe that I had anything wrong with me. And then finally, I had one of those moments where I was sitting on the floor, didn't remember how I got there, in front of the refrigerator. The doors are open, and I am just eating. It looked like a tornado, or somebody had a yard sale that went terribly wrong. I just had stuff everywhere. And I kind of came to my senses after eating all the stuff because my blood sugar was so low, and I realized I can't keep doing this. So that's when I just started changing the way that I eat and exercise and checking it. And I got an insulin pump. I got a hilarious story about that. You probably don't have time for it, but I got an insulin pump, and then just kind of started to own it. Make it my own.
Yeah, no, I'm looking down the list, and one of the questions I'm going to ask you is about like your diet and exercise, because I know you're really into that. So you got to this point where you saw yourself, like, just like you said, you were like eating all of it. You said, so you were living a life high and low, and you're like, I can't live this life anymore. And from that moment on, am I right? You decided to like go, okay, let me do the best I can.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I was married at the time, and we had 2 kids. No, we only had 1. And it was like one of those moments where I realized I'm doing this for more than just me. Like, I got to stop being an idiot at some point. And that's what it was. It's just selfish at some point. And I just kept thinking I was like Superman, like nothing could hurt me. So then I did have to own it. And I changed a bunch of things. Diet was the first one. Out of everything that I could control, I figured my food, what I put in my mouth, was the least I could do that. And that's when it started. You know, I decided to run a couple marathons. I did an Ironman. That could be the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I will never.
The dumbest best thing.
Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So yeah, I just had to own it because I got tired of just ping ponging back and forth. You know, just high and low, high and low, high and low, and I realized how tired I was when I finally got it back into control, at least decent control. I was like, oh my gosh, like I have been tired for years. And I didn't know it. You know, I was just tapped out all the time. Wake up after going to sleep more tired than when I went to bed, and I was like, this was not worth it.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I was actually just the other day, like, I remember when I would take naps and I would wake up from my nap feeling like I had a major hypo, and I would be 180 or 200.
Yeah.
Now when I hit numbers like that, my head starts hurting, and I'm like, this is good. That means I'm not numb to this. And I feel like you're kind of on the same boat with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely got numb to it. I couldn't. We always tried that guessing game. Like, I'm going to check my blood and let's see who can get the closest. And I couldn't even get close to what it was. I'm like, I have no idea what I am.
Yeah. So before you got diagnosed, describe us, what was that training like to get to that position that you were essentially at when you got diagnosed? Like, did you need organization skills, certain math skills? Like, tell us that.
Yeah. Most of it was electronics. I went through 4 years of training before that moment, before I got accepted into that program. 4 years of training, and some of it military, some of it schooling, electronics, computers, all that kind of stuff. When I went in, I had a dream of aviation being a career for me. Okay. And when I left the town that I was in, I was kind of like that, you know, kick the dirt off your feet and say, I'm never going back. And little did I know I was coming back. I was coming back sooner than I wanted, but I just got I got to the point where it was all about me. You know, I wasn't thinking about anybody else with my schedule and all of that. So I was basically training my whole life just to get into that program in the military, and then made it. And then partway through that process, through the schooling, you know, that's when I got sick and had to get kicked out. So it was kind of like it wasn't just a medical change for me with type 1. It was also a massive shift in life. So I went back to college, went through computer technology, computer networking, all this kind of stuff. And I had to take a few electives. And this is where it clicked for me. I had to take a few electives. And one of those that I took was creative writing. And I just loved it. It wasn't like something I ever thought I could do for a living. But when I got to the end of my training, because the military helped pay for school, what they do is they say, hey, we'll pay for your books, tuitions, fees, and supplies. And man, I hope nobody in the military or the government watches this. But should I not? Do I need to not say this? Hang on. No, I'll be fine. So what I did was they were going to pay for my network certification, because I was going to be a CNA, certified network administrator. That's what all my schooling was going toward. And I actually went to the people in charge and I said, listen, I know you're going to pay for the certification. It's thousands of dollars, but I would rather that you buy me this. And I gave him this printout I had of an editing computer for video. Yeah. And they're like, what is this? Like, this has nothing to do with your major. What are you doing? I'm like, I know, but I got some ideas. Just shh, bro. Shh. Listen, just hear me out, man. Hear me out. You know, so I kind of had that conversation, and they said, no, there's no way we can do it. I said, no, listen, I think you can. It'll be great. And they did. They bought me an editing computer, and I brought that thing home, and it was like the whole world kind of opened up. I already had a camera, but I didn't have anything to edit on. And so I was volunteering at a church. I didn't even have any place at our house where we could put this thing up. And so in the church, they let me put it in the janitor's closet. I was on a plastic picnic table in the back of the janitor's closet, just clicking away, just making videos in the janitor's closet. And that's kind of where it all clicked for me. I'm like, this could be fun if I could ever do this for a living. And that's how it shifted. Wow.
Because I see your videos now and your content, and I'm gonna get into the next question. I was scrolling through YouTube, and the way I see it is, with diabetes content, I don't feel like there's enough. You know, when someone has a certain problem in life in general, someone will say, hey, you should look up this person, or you should go watch this person. When someone gets diagnosed, we're like, you should check out, there's that blank space. And I feel like that's what was missing with diabetes. So I was scrolling through YouTube, and I love documentaries, and I saw Type 1 Day 1. I watched that a long time ago. And then the other day it came up back, and I was like, Neil Greathouse. Oh my God, I know Neil. That was Neil's video. Oh, that video was crazy. That documentary was insane. Like the level of like inspiration it brought me. Can you tell the people at home what is Type 1 Day 1? And then we're gonna get really deep into like your content, HACKTHEBETES, Instagram, and whatnot.
So I woke up one night and I texted a friend of mine. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I had this idea. And typically you just jot those down on whatever it is you can write it down on, and then you hope you can actually read it when you wake up in the morning. But this was one of those ones where I thought, I got to tell somebody. So I started texting him. I said, when you wake up, you'll see all this, but I have this idea. It was all based off of just what you said. When somebody finds out that they've got type 1, what is the first thing they're going to do? And typically it's going to be, they're going to Google it. They're going to start looking for what, and don't look on WebMD. Don't look on any of that, because it's just, you're going to immediately think like, I'm gonna, it's like, this is an incurable, this is caused by mosquitoes. By the time you're all done, you're not even going to know what you're talking about. So I had this idea because I had just watched 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. And the thought of every day this person has amnesia and she has to put this VHS tape in and it describes her life now. I said, what if we had something that people could watch as soon as they find out that they've got type 1? So then I called Beyond Type 1 and I said, listen, I have this idea. I'm going to do it with or without you. I'd love to do it with you, but I'm going to do it regardless. And I said, I just want to crowdsource as many people as we can and ask them, what advice would you give somebody if they found out they have type 1, and how would you encourage them? Now, I didn't know what people were going to send back. And a lot of the, here's what I wish I knew then kind of stuff was the same. But the one thing they kept talking about was the fact that you're not alone. And I didn't realize that it's actually lonely when you first find out. You're like, I don't even know anybody who has type 1. I don't even know how to spell it. So we basically set out to crowdsource all that, had a bunch of different people send stuff in. And then I just started traveling around and got to follow 2 different families who recently found out they've got type 1. And to be honest with you, one of them went differently than I thought. I was going to the doctor with Wesley, and he thought the doctor was going to say, you don't have it. And the doctor turned around and told him he had it. And there's a moment in that video where I'm in the elevator filming him, and I'm thinking, do I need to stop filming this now? Because he was blank, like blank look on his face. He had no idea how to process what the doctor just told him. And I thought, we might as well show it, like just show it all. So that whole thing was just meant to be encouraging to people who just found out they've got type 1.
That video was like, so basically you had filmed these, like basically 50 First Dates. I completely understand that concept where he had Drew Barrymore watch the same thing where she had this thing where she forgot her memory and she would watch that over and over. And I feel like that's really it. Like when you first diagnose, your friends kind of look at you like, oh, so you ate too much candy, or then you feel left out. You're like,
yeah.
You're kind of like, especially when you first get diagnosed. So that's something right there. The next question I want to ask you is, you have so many videos and you did a challenge. Am I right? Was it called HACKTHEBETES, or was it called something else?
Yeah, I've had a lot over the years. That's how the whole thing started, because I was trying to figure out a way. I got tired of going to the doctor and them telling me all this negative stuff. Mm-hmm. And I thought, maybe we can fix this. Like maybe we can figure out how to, and so that was the first time I said, we'll see if we can hack the beaties. And that was kind of where it all started. So the first year I started doing challenges, and I made a video every day. Instagram was only 15 seconds at a time, so it was a whole lot easier. Okay. But I did a video every single day for an entire year of different things that we were going to try. So I tried cutting out, no soda. I tried cutting out no fast food. I tried cutting out carbohydrates. I tried cutting out, Justin Bieber music, from whatever it would take to be able to get diabetes to go away. And we just challenged a bunch of people to go along with me and try it. And that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, because you had this video on Instagram where I got tagged by my friend Brian. Shout out to Brian. And he was, you had all these test strips, and then you laid them out, and you were like, all right, the person who's closest to estimating how many test strips wins a supply of X amount of test strips. What was that? Tell the people, like, because that was an example of like the creative mental process that you do for the community.
Well, everybody, you either do one of two things. Like when you check your blood sugar, what do you do with that test strip? Like, what do you actually do with yours?
Toss in the trash.
Yeah. So for some reason, I got tired of it. I would just put mine in my meter case, and the next time I'd open it up, stuff would fall out. Like, you know, like, it was so embarrassing when I would do it. And I thought, well, let me just start putting them in the zipper. And so over time, over the year's time, I had started putting them in a Ziploc bag. And also at some point, that video, the main point of it is to show people how many times over the course of the year somebody who has type 1 really has to check their blood. But you do it in a funny enough way that seems engaging. And so people are learning without knowing they're learning. And then I actually had an extra shipment. Somebody sent me a bunch of test strips that were extra. What am I going to do? Check my blood sugar like 5 times as much as what I normally do? I'm not going to do anything. They're going to expire. So we just gave them away to people if they could guess. You know those jars of like jelly beans? You like guess how many jelly beans are in the jar? I don't have any jelly beans, but I have old dirty test strips. So that
we're not going to do jelly beans here. Don't worry.
No.
So like you said something that really clicked with me. You said when you go to a doctor's office, the thing that I heard was like, they can only give you so much. When you go home, I want you to tell the people at home the importance of community. Because when I go to your page, I think of community. I think of people getting together, making really fun content, and showing people like making kind of your own thing about diabetes. The way I've created a story for my diabetes is, even if I do get cured, that's not the end of my complaints. There's always going to be another complaint. Right. So tell people at home really the importance of finding that community, because the doctor's not going to call you or to ask you about, oh, you had a hypo, or he's going to put your stuff and go, why? Why'd you do this? Why is your number like this? Why?
Right.
Why?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You know, I always get so nervous going into the doctor because basically they're going to tell you you're doing it wrong. You know, it's like your father-in-law would do it. Like he'd look at you and go, oh, is that how you're going to do this? You're going to do like that? And it just was so negative going into it. And I started realizing I'm putting too much hope and expectation on my doctor. My doctor's going to see me once every 3 months, and that's not enough.
Yes.
So I don't know. I guess I was kind of embarrassed by type 1, if I'm just being totally honest, years and years and years ago. Not now. I obviously, you can tell me I don't care now. But the time, it was just like something I didn't want to have to explain to anybody. But I needed help with some things, and I was shocked at how many people are out there on social media that have answers. And even if they don't have the answers, they probably know somebody who does. That is when it finally started to kick in for me, because I started asking questions and I realized something. The group of people in that community, they understand. They at least have some answers, or they've tried something different, and they're not contractually obligated to say a certain thing to you like your doctor is. They're not bound by some of the same rules. And I get it, like they're not doctors, but at the same time, they live with a disease that I only talk to somebody in an office about for about 20 minutes every 3 months. Odds are, even if they don't have the answers, they have understanding. That was like a game changer for me. And I did not realize how many people I was able to learn from out there on the community. And it kind of shook me. So I started making some of these videos because I knew a couple kids who recently found out that they had type 1 and they were just flat out depressed. So I made a video. The first one I made was because I had moved, and the new job that I had, I was surrounded by people who didn't know about type 1. Like the old group of people in another state, they knew about it, but this new group of people, and they were asking me questions like, what's that pager for? Why are you sucking your finger? Like, what are you sticking this thing on? Why are you, you know, it's just like all that. And it turned into a couple of those classic statements like, I'm getting ready to eat something, or going, oh, you allowed to have that? You're going to tell me what I'm allowed to have or have not. And then, and you know, you get on your soapbox, and I realized, all right, I could sum all this up if I make a video and then explain it to them. And so I did that. That's where it started. And then I realized it was helping a few people out. And I started doing the videos, not for myself, but for other people at some point. Cause I just, you know, it can be frustrating, or you can feel really lonely, or we could just jump in and help somebody else out. And I always feel like if I can help somebody else out with whatever they're dealing with, it may not change my problem, but it might change my perspective on my problem. So I started focusing on that.
I think that even when it changes your perspective, regardless, when you help somebody out, it's going to help you like fold, like tenfold.
Yep.
And like with the way social media is going, you're heading in the right spot. Like the people need you. I feel like you're underrated in a sense of how much people know what you're doing and the content you're creating. Like eventually, you know, kids are going to end up watching all these people, these YouTubers, social media creators, and the message is going to be people like you or me. And like the message is to let them know, like, hey, whether I'm talking about burnout, Neil's talking about community, or the things he does with his health, or trying to make somebody laugh and put perspective.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
You know, that's humongous. And my big thing I love talking about, I still talk about it all the time, is diabetes burnout. A lot of my listeners know I used to binge eat really bad, and I would be in a dark place and wouldn't tell anyone, you know, because I had this story I created about diabetes and perfectionism. Tell the people your best, you know, you've been living with type 1 for a long time. You know, I don't really know much people that long. Give them your best top 1 or 2 tips for that kid going through a burnout. What would you tell him?
So what happens to me when I get tired is I kind of got to learn for the triggers. So for me, look, like I'm not gonna go on a drug binge and, you know, put my face in a 5-pound bag of cocaine. I'm just not gonna do it. But there is a temptation for me that is different. So just the same way the drugs may actually be that temptation for somebody else, it's weird. Little Debbie and some, you know, like a stack full of donuts or whatever, it tastes better here than it actually does in real life, because there's so many consequences to it afterwards. What I notice is when I get in a rough patch and I get burned out, what I turn to is what's going to make me feel good. And I always forget that what feels best is actually good control over the long haul. And it's a marathon, man. It's not I mean, I've got good days and I got bad days. I have days where I fall so far off the wagon. The wagon's not even there anymore. I don't even know where it went, you know, because it can get really hard to do this day in and day out. And I think if you're not careful, you can start hiding some of that stuff from the people who care about you the most, because you don't want to be vulnerable and transparent, because you don't want, because look, even this thing, you know, like even my phone with like Dexcom, my wife can see what my blood sugar is.
Yeah.
I'm right there. I'm 134 right now. She can see what that is, but I'm telling you, this bugs me sometimes, because I almost want to be like, that's my blood. That's not your blood. Like, you can't tell me. And she'll check on me like, hey, why are you high, or why are you going low? And at some point, it's like, it's so personal.
Yeah.
It's not as personal as you think it is. It's just pride. At some point, you want to be the person in charge of everything. You don't want anybody to tell you what to do. And that's when I notice I get way off track. So I got to force myself to be open and honest with people about it.
Yeah. And something else that clicked with me is when you said this is a long game. My big shift and mental shift for me was I would be in this mind of perfectionism. Whenever I would eat something that I felt like I shouldn't have, I would be like, oh, all right, day's over. I'm taking as much as I want, eating as much as I want. But the thing that I have to remember is I started telling myself, like, hey, you're going to have this disease for X amount of years. Like, perfectionism is a 0. You can eat the best stuff, work out, you know, read the book, and your blood sugar is going to be 180. What are you going to do now? That's the part. And that was the mental shift for me. I was like, no more perfectionism. 0.
Yeah. I also started to put too much stock in what my A1C was every time I would go to the doctor, because here's what would happen. I would work my tail off for 3 months and then go in there and get a good number. And I would want to come out, and all of a sudden, after I'm done, it was a letdown, which is so weird, because I'd be like, dang it, I got to do that again. Like, I can't just sit in that for a while. So it's not like you can't have an off day, but you got to look at it long range. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have days where you do perfect and other ones you don't. But that number is just a marker. Like, you're aiming at it. It's not everything, but you got to do the best you can, because I don't want to be. I know people they've lost fingers and toes and feet and whatever, and all that stuff sounds like a horror story. I just don't want to hurt my potential for what I'm capable of long term, because I wanted to try and be so perfect now that I either I messed it up, or I just, I went crazy.
You just cracked.
Yep.
That's the thing I was talking about. Before we get into type 1, I've never asked this question. I think it'd be really cool for the listeners. What's it like being a dad with type 1 diabetes? Tell us like that whole thing. I'm so like curious. I'm like, all right.
Oh man. Before I had kids, I kept telling my wife, unrealistically, I kept telling her, I don't want my kids to ever have to see me take a shot. That was before I was on a pump, and it's just unrealistic. So I tell my kids this, like my daughter wears glasses, my son wears glasses. I try and teach them to look at type 1 the same way as you would with somebody who wears braces on their teeth. Everybody's got something. Mm-hmm. This is not the end for me. I just have to be really careful with what I eat and how I live. And it's really just self-control. So they have seen me have highs and lows. They've seen me exercising like crazy. They've seen me roller coaster all over it. But it's not that Dad's in a dangerous place. I'm never going to put that on them. My kids are all teenagers now. Yeah. My daughter's birthday is today, so she just turned 13. So I've literally got 3 teenagers, and they know what this is, but they're also proud of me for just kind of owning it, as opposed to keeping it in like. It's not shrouded in mystery. It's not like I'm lying to them and tell them, could this thing, could it go bad? Yeah, it might, but it's, I'm not going to let it happen. It's weird, man. It's a weird balance. If it were just me, I probably wouldn't have that perspective, but because of them and my wife, it puts a lot of things in perspective, man. I'm not just doing this for me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally hear you. I'm sure there's like, as I'm hearing you, I'm like, there's so many things to it. Like, you can use it to your advantage to show your kids any metaphor in life. And I feel like that's what I was thinking about today. I was reading a book from Jordan Peterson, and self-help has a negative connotation, at least nowadays. And the way I look at it is, I read these books, listen to these audios, but I really apply it to my diabetes, because I think success principles for anyone is no different with diabetes. Patience, perseverance, being persistent, adapting, and all that stuff. It really does apply, and your kids are going to look at you and be like, wow, look at Dad, like he's persevering, or he's being X, and that's like really salute to you. So
it's real life, man. Your kids, nothing comes, it's not. They're not waiting for that one moment where they can hit it big, or they're not walking around here with no problem. Everybody has something. That's what I keep telling them. Everybody's got something.
Exactly. Let's talk about Beyond Type 1. Beyond Type 1 is a huge organization. Like, they're crushing it in the diabetes community. What are you doing with them? What projects were you working on? Current ones, future ones? Just tell us that whole thing with you and Beyond Type 1.
Yeah. Beyond Type 1 came into the space, into, that Type 1 diabetes space, that advocacy space, about 3 years ago. And they kind of rushed onto the scene because of, they just had a different approach and a different view to it. Because I think prior to that, a lot of the organizations were like walkathons and I don't know. It's kind of like the womp womp womp, like whatever, and just diabetes just felt that way. But they really embraced celebrating it, and also talking about living beyond, which really stood out to me. And then also, to be totally honest with you, like really good, clean design always stands out to me. So I just noticed that they were kind of a step above. So when I first really started getting connected with them was around the Type 1 Day 1, which is 2 years ago, November. And they asked me to be a council member on board as a council member. So we've got quarterly council calls. We are strategizing with them. We're doing as much as we can to help make sure that we are not just advocating for type 1, but we're working towards a cure, but then it's education as well. So it's like 3 tiers to that. Education is huge. People just don't know. It's so crazy. In 2018, they just don't know. Advocacy, we're going to fight for this thing to make sure that it's in the space and it's out there and that people know. And then also we're working towards a cure. So they're extremely lean. Like, it is a small organization. They still think of themselves as a digital startup. They don't think of themselves as a massive conglomerate of whatever. I mean, they're lean, but I love that they're working that hard. And then because of Beyond Type 1 and Sarah Lucas and Juliet and Nick and the whole team, even Sam, being able to say yes to doing this documentary on Bike Beyond just kind of shows you how forward thinking they are. So when they said yes to that, I was like, all right, we're buckle up, partners. Here we go.
Yeah, I really literally cannot express how exciting it is to see the content, see what you guys are doing, and it merges perfectly because you said, education is huge, and the way I promote my stuff is okay, here's how I see it. We're gonna have diabetes for a good amount of time, which is not negative. It just is what it is. Let's do the best that we can to keep that window of blood sugar small as possible. Let's educate ourselves more, and yeah, why not? Let's tell our non-diabetic friends what it is. And Beyond Type 1 is doing that on steroids, really.
Yeah, they are. They're very, very well connected. I'm very fortunate to be able to work with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of activities do you do in terms of exercising? What are your favorite sports or all that stuff?
Well, I ran for a long time. I haven't run in a while because I got hit by a car last September. I was on a One Wheel Plus, and it was right after we got done filming the documentary. I was in the neighborhood next to ours, and I was on the one wheel. I was going down the road, not wearing a helmet. Also, this is a PSA for wear your stinking helmet. But I didn't have a helmet on, and I was just going down the road, and another car was coming this direction and just came left to center and just hit me. So they just took me out. So I've been off my feet as far as running for about 6 months. Eyesight has finally come back. You can hardly tell that anything is is different. It really rang my bell. Cracked my head open, had a brain bleed, and all this kind of stuff. So typically, I just love to. I like running and cycling. I would much rather be on a bike than I would running. And then diet wise,
that was a nice question.
Okay, so I typically eat the keto lifestyle now. I don't even call it a diet. For years, I ate very low carbohydrate, and I could kind of tap out on energy a little faster than other people could. So if I'm running a half marathon, I would notice I would hit the wall way faster than anybody else would. And I didn't realize the high fat side of it, that your body burning fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates and glucose, and what it has done in allowing me to be more balanced. More energy.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of question marks on, why is my blood doing this? I see people get very frustrated. If I could put a soapbox up here right now, I would. A lot of people with type 1 are so frustrated on social media because their numbers are bouncing all over the place, because their pump didn't work or whatever. And at the end of the day, we're not victims. No one did anything to us. We just have to be wise and responsible with what we eat. And I'm not saying if you don't eat keto, you're not right. You got to figure out what works for you and stick it out and make good decisions. So keto was that for me. It just finally clicked in for me. It just made all the sense in the world.
You're preaching. That's what I live with every day. I see, and I'm not saying here oh, look at me, I'm looking at everyone. What I do nowadays, especially as someone I'm really trying hard to promote myself, is I don't go on there and say, well, this is happening because that, when you're a type 1 diabetic, you become more mindful of these things. So right. You comment saying I hope all is well with a genuine heart. I really do.
Yeah.
And it makes me kind of sad because people are why? And for me, it's I know what I did, and that's clarity. Of course, there are days where it's like, what the F is going on?
Yeah.
You know, but when we become more aware, we have more clarity. It's more like freedom. You know, I put more discipline. And if someone were to sum it up, you know, Ali, how do you do X? I'm like, well, I don't eat everything. You know, it's just simple as that. There's freedom and discipline is how I say it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what got you to that point of, because there's like so many different things when it comes to eating, what made you choose keto? Because that stuff can drive me nuts. There's like, oh, there's this, there's that,
There's so many things.
So many things.
You know, for me, it's so weird to talk about the way you feel with something, because if you follow your feelings, you're kind of going to be tossed around in life in general. But when it comes to how you feel from what you eat, that changed it for me. I started keto last April, and it was a noticeable improvement. So what I noticed is, first of all, it cut the amount of insulin I used in half. And I was like, I didn't even have a doctor okay it yet. I was really curious to see if that was even all right. And anytime you can decrease the amount of insulin you're taking from a financial standpoint alone,
yeah, just that.
really good. Like, it's really good. But overall, like, I just felt way better. And then I had the advantage of being around 3 of the cyclists who rode across the country and Bike Beyond. And I watched those 3 just continually crush it. And I was like, wow, this is real. Like, it's a possibility. And now there were vegans on the trip. There were people who were gluten-free on the trip. There were people who ate in all various ways, but I just watched how consistently people who ate that way were doing it. And I just felt like I had a ton of energy, and I just felt better. So I don't know if that's the right answer, but
no, I get you.
That's the way it clicked in for me. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not both doctors here. Let's explain biology.
Nope.
But the thing that I really commend you for is, like, I really admire you and I look up to you, which in the end I'll be selfish and ask for like questions of advice. But I see you're an advocate, but at the same time, you're also taking care of yourself, which is huge for me. There's so many advocates I dearly love and appreciate, but it's hard for me to see them not take care of their health. You know, at the end of the day, I know there's that whole thing about, oh, I eat whatever I want, I just have to dose for it. I feel like that's just our ego and our insecurities saying that because we don't want to feel lesser of a human. What I tell the people that, you know, follow me is, I choose not to eat that. It's a power. I can physically eat anything I want,
right?
But I know there's going to be something I have to deal with. It's not about being a good person, a bad person. So you're like both of them. You know, you're an advocate, putting out phenomenal content, and then you're essentially eating your own dog food. Like, you're preaching this.
Yeah, I was sitting at a table with a bunch of people who don't have type 1 2 days ago, and we had this like a team lunch, a bunch of people there, and they were just asking a couple of questions about food, and one of them said, like, why do you eat the way that you eat? And I said, I want to be really clear about something. I could eat any of the things that you guys have at this table. There's not one thing here that I cannot eat. I'm choosing to eat this way because there is a price to pay. I could eat that and I could take this insulin, but I'm just telling you, it's going to be this roller coaster and it's going to take a toll. So I am making a personal choice to just back away from it and make the easier decision, which is to not eat that, than to figure out how much insulin, how much exercise, how many fluids do I have to eat. This is, if I ate whatever I wanted to right now, I'll eventually get my blood sugar back in control by about 9 p.m. You know what I mean? Like, it's not worth that. It just wasn't worth it for me.
Yeah,
I'm not perfect, man. I make some dumb mistakes too, but I'm just trying to. At some point, like, it is so tiring trying to fake that I'm great at type 1. So I just rather be real with the whole thing. Like, it's just, we all got to deal with this stuff. So just be real about it.
Yeah. And they appreciate that, you know. I want to be respectful of your time. We're closing off. So last couple of questions. Where do you want, or where do you see, well, actually, no, we'll go. Where do you want the diabetes world to be in a couple of years? Where, in terms of the people, technology, where do you hope for it to be? Where do you strive for it?
We put a lot of emphasis on the stuff that we have. The difference between the G6 Dexcom and the G5 Dexcom. Between fast acting insulin and normal acting, or this pump and that pump and whatever. I have this perspective only because I've been to the jungles of Peru multiple times to help with medical trips or with mission trips or with helping to build schools or whatever it is. And you see people who don't have any of that and they're still managing well. I want us to be in a place where we do the best with what we have because it's so much healthier. The answer to better control is never good. It's no different than the phone. My kids, they have an iPhone 6, and my son was telling me the other day, he's like, Dad, I think I need to get at least the 8. And I'm like, why? Like, why do you genuinely need it? And it's not that it was a bad phone. It's just use what you have the best way you possibly can until it doesn't work anymore. And then you work on the next one. The answer is not in this or that or whatever. Good control starts here. It's on me. It's a responsibility regardless of what you have access to. Now, I'm not saying that to people who don't have access to insulin and insurance is brutal and all that, but just perspective would be amazing to have it in this space, because a lot of times we think of ourselves as victims and we're not. We just aren't.
Yeah, that's so it's such a coincidence you say that today, because I was just walking around my house and I was like, MDI, pumps, this, that, whatever. I think you can make it succeed. It's what are you doing with those?
Yep.
It's the same thing with the camera. It's not what gear do you have. It's how creative are you?
Right.
And the same thing applies for my diabetes. How much can I implement with the reading I'm doing, the more videos I'm watching, changing, adjusting to my diet or exercising a certain way, testing my basal. All these things, there's so much tools out there. And I feel like when you pointed right here, I was like, oh, 0 the pancreas, double the heart. Shout out to Jiggy. I'm emotional. So I was like, oh, he's going for the heart. He said, oh, okay. He said something.
It is. No, that's where it's at, man.
Yeah. Neil, I truly appreciate you coming on. I'm a huge fan. I really look up to you. Just to close off, what advice do you have for young Ali, diabetes daily hustle? I currently just, my goal is to, at least right now, I always change what I love doing. I went from trying to make music to being this or that. But right now, I really love diabetes. And I don't plan on trying to be a doctor, but I want to basically make healthy living with diabetes the cool thing. I want to brand that. I want to be that guy, essentially. What advice do you have for me? What steps should I take, or just anything I can take?
Well, you hinted on it earlier. It's not the gear, it's what you do with it. I think you creating on a daily basis like you are is the answer to get where you're going. A lot of times people will say that they would have done this if they had this. And the people who make it in this space or in anything like this, as a creator, as a content creator, you have to ship something every day. That there is no other way to do it. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It doesn't matter if it wasn't perfect. You got to ship it out every single day. That will force you to be better. And what it will also force you to do is be better at listening what is going on out there in the space, because the answer isn't just you making more videos. The answer is you being nimble enough with your ear to the ground and figuring out, listening what people need. And I think you're already on it. Like at the end of the day, talking about burnout, talking about this thing consistently and being positive in this space, there's not enough of it. If we had 100 more of you, it still wouldn't be enough. It would be better, but it wouldn't be enough, because you're encouraging people and you've got a smile on your face while you do it. I'm not saying that means that you're faking it or that you don't have a down day, but you genuinely have a smile on your face. And that is so important with people. Look, there are going to be kids that are watching you. There's going to be parents of kids that have type 1 that will be watching you. There's going to be grown adults, whatever that is. Just be really good at listening. There's this old saying. It says we don't lead by what we say. We lead by how we hear. Let your listening be the way that you lead in this space, knowing what people need and what they want, and then just make a promise to yourself that you're going to ship something every single day the way that you're doing it. Even if it's a 1 minute video one day and it's a 3 minute one the other day, I think give yourself some limitations. When it comes to making a video, Instagram's 1 minute limit is actually your best friend. It forces you to do something in less time, because if you didn't have those limitations, it'd be a 4 minute video. And I typically make better decisions knowing that it can't be longer than 1 minute. Yeah. So I would just say, give yourself some self-imposed limitations. Keep your ears open to what people need, and just be that constant encouraging voice, man. We need a lot more of you. We really do.
So much. I really, it means a lot coming from you. Like, sometimes when I'm not trying to make this all about me, but when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking the stuff that motivates me is I want a kid to see me on the internet one day, and I want to be the reason why, oh, wow, this is cool. Like, I want to be, living healthier and make my mom proud, or I want to be the best version I can with diabetes. And I just felt like it was my tool. But for the people at home, Neil really pushes me to be that funny, creative, edgy guy. So I truly appreciate it. Neil, I really want them to follow you and check you out. Give them like 2 or 3 plugs where they can find you guys. Seriously, check out Neil on his Instagram or wherever he's going to plug you right now.
Well, on Instagram, it's at Diabuddies. You know how many people actually say they call it the beats? I'm like, no, man, Dr. Dre's got that. I don't have that one. The beats are not me. So it's Diabuddies on Instagram. I am on Twitter, but to be honest with you, I haven't opened up Twitter in a long time. I don't know what my problem is. And then YouTube. Obviously, my name's Neil. So on YouTube, if you want to search Type 1 Day 1, you could find me, or you could just search Neil Greathouse, and you'll find me on there.
Yeah, or you could just search phenomenal document. Come up. I'll link this on the show. Neil, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys, we will talk soon. All right. All right, Neil, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
All right.
I'm recording right now. Is there anything I could do for you, my man?
Man, you're doing it. I watch your feed, and you literally almost have like this smirk on your face every time. It's like you know an inside joke that we don't know. And it makes me want to watch more to figure out what it is. I think you're doing great, man.
Really, I hope we can talk soon, Tags, or I really want to collaborate soon, like on YouTube or whatever we could do, and just get stuff out there.
I love it.
So yeah, have a good fun birthday with your daughter, and have a good day.
Thanks, man.
All right,
I'll see you.
Okay.
Well, that was the episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. If you guys really liked this episode, I want you to do me 2 favors. Go ahead on Instagram and check out Neil Greathouse. His Instagram handle is Diabuddies. It's the and then BETES. And he puts out videos, I think, once a day, 1 minute clips of just stuff he really feels like needs to be addressed, or he makes something funny out of living with diabetes while giving you accurate, helpful information. So that's one favor. The other one is, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. Let me know how I'm doing on iTunes. Drop a comment in the YouTube videos, because I know I'm putting these here on YouTube as well. So thanks so much for watching. That being said, see you for the next episode.